And now something completely different.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking to you live just outside
I like to think balding is just God's way of saying, now let's see you get laid.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it?
What I'd really like to do is put the greatness of this man in perspective.
The hair loss community has a lot to be thankful for, having you as a spokesperson.
You mean you just call this guy up?
About life and about reality.
And now, America's #1 reality radio show for men. Live from Los Angeles, it's Spencer Kobren's The Bald Truth.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. Phone number is 0203-372-4683. It's so great to be here for another The Bald Truth UK. I want to welcome all of our UK and all of our listeners all around Europe, all throughout Europe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Listen, if you're new to the broadcast, don't know who I am or why we're here, I'm a consumer advocate for men and women suffering with hair loss. I'm the author of The Bald Truth and The Truth About Women's Hair Loss, and I am a guy who's been dealing with hair loss for well over 2 decades. If you're just tuning in, you're viewing the program, you're probably like, well, wait a second, this guy's got hair in his head. Well, I will tell you that I have been extremely fortunate to make the right moves to kind of figure out a way to navigate through this crazy industry. But this is a partial sham. You know, you need to know that. Maybe some of you guys can tell, but, you know, it's kind of like a quasi comb over. I wear some, head makeup in the back. But, I'm 47 years old. I started to lose my hair at the age of 21. And I will tell you that, I think that I am living proof that not only is there life after hair loss, it really is possible to do something about your hair loss. For a lot of guys, there are people who, don't make candidates for medical therapy or aren't candidates for surgical hair restoration. So it's more difficult for those people, for guys who and women who can't, either tolerate medication or they don't do well on these treatments, to really do something about their hair loss. But there's also ways to become better equipped to deal with hair loss in general. This is really what this show is all about. And the reason we are coming to you live from Los Angeles, and of course we have our studios in London, is because we've been doing the show for 14 years, and you guys in the UK have been busting my balls about getting something live where you guys can call in during a reasonable hour to talk about your hair loss issues. So here we are. Of course, my sidekick for the broadcast is Spencer Spex Stevenson, live from TBT Studios in London. And if you don't know who Spex is a guy who's been through the mill himself. He is a hair loss sufferer for many years. The guy he's had 10 hair transplants. And if you're taking a look at him now and you see his hair, this is what can be done. Again, only if you're the right candidate. But, we're here to kind of guide you in a safe direction, to answer all your questions about everything and anything hair loss, and to let you guys know that there is hope out there. But do not make, rash decisions. You have to do your due diligence, because there are plenty of people out there, sadly, who really can't be helped with the treatments that we have today. But, at least they have a place to learn about all the products and services out there, so they don't make the same mistakes that so many people make in this $3.5 billion a year hair loss industry. Let's say hi to Spex before we start to take some phone calls. Spex, how are you, man?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Spence. Thanks very much for the intro. Yeah, and
you got it, man.
That's basically what we are here for, to make sure that guys don't end up having to have 10 hair transplants like I did. My situation is extreme in no uncertain terms. Very few people with today's technologies and getting informed and empowered via the likes of this radio show and the Bald Truth Talk Forum. Very few ever need more than a couple of surgeries, one at best. And it's important that people understand that hair restoration can be a viable option, but also that they get well informed with regards to preventing further hair loss and potentially even avoiding the need for surgery I started my journey over 10 years ago, and was very ill-informed, and as a result of having poor, inappropriate surgery to start with, led me on a journey that I had to continue to get out the other side of the tunnel. And what we're here to do is to make sure that guys who enter that tunnel are informed and empowered and can get through to the other side quickly, swiftly, and safely. And looking forward to the show tonight, an Easter special, and happy Easter to everybody out there who celebrates Easter. And look forward to the show.
And happy Passover to all my Jewish friends out there.
Yeah, likewise. I've got a Jewish wife.
That's right. But I think your story is very interesting, and I know we repeat the story a lot. We've only done about a few broadcasts for the live UK show, but I think it's important for the new listeners to kind of understand that you are a guy who made the mistakes initially. You were a guy who fell for the flashy marketing, the ads that really entice people into thinking that hair transplantation is a one-size-fits-all procedure, and all you need to do is basically put down your money and you're going to get your life back. And that couldn't be further from the truth, especially when you're dealing with, in my view, the large chain clinics like you dealt with. You actually flew to the States to have your surgery performed because you believed, based on their marketing, this company's marketing, that this was the place to go.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that was over 10 years ago. And if we remember, over 10 years ago, the internet was in its infancy. And with regards to accurate, ethical, honest information, there weren't the forums for people to share information freely and readily. I unfortunately fell prey to the clever marketing, the clever salesman. However, I was also very young, very naive, very vulnerable, very desperate, as so many hair loss sufferers are generally. So what we're doing and what my role has become is to make sure that guys don't get abused by this industry like I did. And it's vital that they get as much information as possible, process that information, understand that hair restoration, if that's the route that they want to go down, is not an exact science. It's like a fingerprint. Everybody is unique. Everybody has unique qualities, characteristics, physiology, and people need to understand that hair restoration is a huge commitment. And with the resources that are available to customers now, it's vital that they utilize them and make sure that they take their time. I didn't. I rushed into it. I wanted a quick fix. I wanted to, get this problem resolved. And I was told by a clever salesman that I could have exactly what I wanted. All I had to do was sign on the dotted line. And as a vulnerable hair loss sufferer, it's, music to anybody's ears. And luckily for them now, the industry is wide open. It's been exposed. And, people are still falling at the hands of the industry. But gosh, it's a much safer environment than it once was. People have just got to make sure that they take their time, and really understand how this industry has kind of evolved, and understand that there are, a lot of great surgeons out there that can provide fantastic levels of service and surgery, and we can hopefully provide information for them with regards to it.
Well, the thing is, I am more than a decade older than you. So I started the process, obviously, in a time when it really was the dark ages. So when I stepped into these offices, whether it was, going to the hair club, or I went to see Dr. Norman Orentreich in New York, who is, the grandfather of surgical hair restoration, of hair transplantation, the guy that reinvented hair transplantation here in the United States back in the 50s. And I just never forget, and I tell the story all the time because it's important for the new guys to hear this. I was 22 or so at the time, and he actually sat me down and said, listen, if you were my own son, I would suggest you try a few hair transplants, a few grafts. And if you don't like them, you don't have to come back. And these are the days when they would have basically cored out a 4mm punch out of the back of my scalp, leaving an open donor wound, and placing them into my slightly receding temples. To this day, my temples, I've definitely gotten worse over the years, but I mean, I would have been a complete basket case if I would have gotten this done, because the truth is I would have had these really unsightly 4 millimeter plugs just in, in this area of my scalp, in the temporal region of my scalp, forming a completely unnatural look, and probably would have suffered a lot of shock loss, severe scarring. I would have been basically set up to be a freak. And I would have had a lifelong struggle of trying to correct this type of work. Who knows where my life would have been, what path I would have taken if I decided to have surgery at that stage. So I feel so grateful. So even though I've never had hair transplant surgery, I've been lucky enough to slow the progression of my hair loss with FDA-approved medication. I paint my head. I have tried partial hair systems in the past and have worn them, and I've done whatever I had to do to try to cover up that bald spot. I prefer makeup at this point, but the point is I wouldn't have had my options would have been so limited if I would have jumped into surgery right away. And while this was back in the late 80s, believe it or not, guys, the same shit's happening today. It may not be quite as bad, but I have seen some really bad work coming, especially these guys who are doing this medical tourism, who are traveling to off the beaten path to have surgery on the cheap. I've seen so much craziness happen. So really, this is a safe place, guys. Take your time, listen to what's going on here. Listen to Spex, call in, get advice from guys who really understand what's happening in this industry. And my advice is this, man. If you're considering surgery, man, surgery is always going to be there. It's a last resort. Consider everything else first before you go under the knife. Let me give out the phone number. It's 02 03 3724 683. Give us a call here at the Bald Truth UK. Love to hear from you. If you have any questions, concerns about your hair loss, just need to vent. If you have surgery scheduled for this week, this coming week, call us. Let us know what's happening. You know what? Even if you put down a $1,500 deposit or 1,500 pound deposit or whatever, if you make the wrong decision, if you're going to sit in the wrong chair next week, it's probably better off to know before you decide to have that surgery. And that would be the best money ever spent, even if you don't get the deposit back, not to go in and have surgery by a doctor or a team that might not be doing state-of-the-art surgical hair restoration. Let's take a phone call. See who this is. Hey, man, who's this and where are you calling from?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. It's Christoph.
Christoph, man, what's happening? What can I do for you, man? Not long time. I guess you called us a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I did, yeah. How's it going, Perrier?
You know what? I'm doing pretty good. In my new digs, finally got my new studio together. It looks similar, but it's a lot different. And I think actually Spex looks like he upgraded a little bit also.
Yeah, well, I'm good, mate. Good to hear from you, Chris. Yeah, you're a big supporter of the show, and it's great that you have the time to call in every week, and we really appreciate it. What are you? How are you, mate? What are you up to? Are you keeping well?
Yeah, I'm keeping well. I'm such a avid fan that I've blown out one of my friends tonight. I was supposed to be going drinking with just to call into the Bold Truth Show.
No, come on, you're kidding me. I appreciate that, but you could actually call from your cell phone, man, while you're at the bar. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, it probably would be a lot of fun, but I can't really have a serious conversation, can I? If I'm wasted.
Well, it depends on how many drinks you have. You might get even more serious after a few beers.
You should call us with one of your lady friends, Chris. Maybe even Skype feed in with some video footage.
Yeah, I think I'll save that for a later show, but I will. Yeah, I'll consider that.
So what's happening, man?
Well, I had a bit of a blowout this week on the junk food again. I went down curry house with my dad and my brother on Monday, and I had Domino's last night. And I've just been binging all week, really. I need to sort it out. I've started to go jogging with my little niece, a 6-year-old. She goes on her little pink bike, and I just go running with her, which is quite good fun. But
well, I talk about this all the time. I talk about it all the time. I'm a binge eater. That's one of my favorite things. Over drinking, I just really enjoy eating. Whatever. I'm a foodie, whether it's junk food or even if it's food that's not so great for you from a finer dining establishment. I eat like a pig, and I really have to watch myself, because if I didn't, I would be probably close to probably 260 if I didn't exercise, and if I didn't somehow, try to pull back the reins, because it's one of my favorite things to do. And I think part of it is just a compulsion, it's part of my whole self-medicating process, and I think a lot of people do it.
I'm gonna really piss you off,
definitely.
Chris. I'm gonna really piss you off, Chris. I've been eating pretty well. I'm down to 9.8% body fat, buddy. So
oh my God.
That's got to motivate you, buddy. Come on.
That's crazy.
What's that? All fat, no muscle, is it?
Yeah, something like that. You know the drill. You used to be big into your training, didn't you? But hey, big. Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, I was training. I was finding it a bit hard to diet at the moment, but I was really disciplined at one stage, but it's just a mental stage. I was in the right frame of mind. I got dumped by a girl at the time, so it sort of got me in the mood for it. But I hurt my shoulder recently, so I haven't been able to go and push nearly every weight. So that sort of led me into my running at the moment. So just to watch what I'm eating really and get back into it.
Good lad.
So what's happening on the hair front?
Hair-wise, what have you got new? You're a big reader of the forums. Anything hot on the forums?
Yeah. I got a couple of questions lined up. One was directed towards Spencer, and the other one was directed towards Spex. I'm sure you can both interject. But who wants their question first, one or the other?
Whatever you want to ask.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, one of my questions led from watching the American show recently, which was very good. And one of the callers brought up that he found that changing his diet had helped his hair. And this led me to bring up this valid point, which I think a lot of guys would be interested in, because I see it right across the forums, which is very common. And what it is to do with, we know that a lot of guys want to keep in good shape and they want to maintain a good, strong physique. So guys will go down to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. Some will diet, some won't diet that much. But I'd say it is quite common that people will take different supplements to aid the progress of attaining their goals, whether this is whey protein or creatine or things like that. And this was brought up also because I remember the gentleman on the show, on the American show, said that Spencer Kobren had wrote a section in his book based on diet, I think, from memory. I'm not sure if that's correct.
That is true, yes.
And, yeah, that's true, yeah, I thought it was. And from training hard and going down the gym, etc., it increases your testosterone. And some people make the assumption that if your testosterone is increasing, then this could potentially, but not necessarily, increase the conversion of DHT, so therefore accelerating hair loss. Now, it doesn't really seem to be as much of an issue for the guys on finasteride, but I just wondered what your thoughts were, Spencer, on this. Just wondered what your thoughts were on this topic.
Well, I think that's a great question. And just to backtrack, I did write a chapter back in the day on a sugar balancing diet, because I believed at the time that balancing your insulin levels could really help to maintain a more even testosterone level, and then a more even DHT level. So, in other words, if there weren't these tremendous spikes in your insulin by ingesting high complex carbohydrates, sugary foods, and really keeping your diet in the low glycemic index area, then you probably will have a better chance of doing well with treatment. So it was kind of theoretical, and I was testing it on myself. And then I wrote Dr. Barry Sears, who is known for writing The Zone and The Zone Diet, which is probably one of the most famous diet books and diets, I think, all over the world, besides the Atkins diet. And he wrote me back, and not only did he write me a really great, heartfelt letter, actually saying, he's been talking about this for a long time, and he really believes that this type of diet could help with hair loss, and including androgenetic alopecia. And he was more than willing to write a couple of pages in my book, which I really appreciate. But it was really the first time that there was any type of correlation or link made between diet and hair loss. And I'm a firm believer. I don't necessarily follow my teachings, so to speak. I mean, for a while there when I was younger, I did. I stuck to the strict casinoid or sugar balancing diet, and I felt that I did really well. I really believe that that's why I did so well so quickly on finasteride without any adverse side effects, because I really, when I started to take the drug, I was kind of like a well-honed machine. I was training hard. I was eating right. Yeah, I would go out and drink, that was my vice. But I was really trying to take care of what I was putting into my body. So I believe that kind of helped with keeping my testosterone levels in check too while I was working out. Because at the time, I'm talking, I was like 27, 28 years old. I was able to get under that bench, and I was able to lift a lot and really train. And there was a time in my life where I was jacked, and it was really something that it was important to me. So I certainly didn't want to get my testosterone level to a point where I thought it might somehow hurt my hair. But I realized after a while, after speaking to a lot of doctors, that that's definitely a controversial topic. We don't know if that slight spike while you're training in testosterone is really going to affect androgenetic alopecia. Now, you said something interesting, that guys on finasteride really don't have to worry about it as much, but I think it depends on the person. But I really don't think that even if you have strong genes for hair loss, that by training normally, at least, that you're going to exacerbate your hair loss. It's kind of like saying that you're going to abstain from sex and to try to maintain a lower testosterone level. And there are guys out there that believe that and preach that on the forum. So I've spoken to a lot of doctors about it. There's only one doctor that I've ever spoken to in the hair world who said there might be some correlation, but there's really been no clinical studies showing that there is. I tell people that I think it's more important to train, to work your body, to do what you need to do to maintain your health and your emotional well-being than is to sit there and be, a lump on a log and have a great head of hair. So that I
think part of, I was just going to say, interject, Spencer. I think part of the reason why this keeps coming up across the forums is because, like you said, there hasn't really been any clinical studies or any studies that are sort of done by any reputable, well-known surgeons. I think if it had been done by them, then it might answer a few questions and put this sort of question to rest, if you understand what I mean.
And I do, but I never, for me, it was like, okay, I started taking finasteride young. I was relatively young, around the time that I was writing the book. But, I still wouldn't have sacrificed trying to keep my body into some sort of shape. And it was beyond vanity. For me, working out, exercising was really part of my mental conditioning. It really helped me psychologically. When I was feeling really depressed and I was feeling hopeless, especially when it came to my hair, I would get into the gym or play basketball, and do something that really got those endorphins, pumping. And it changed my point of view. It changed my perspective. And it would only take a few minutes, a half an hour of training. All of a sudden, I would start feeling better. And by the time I finished my workout, for several hours, after the workout, I felt great. And I was able to focus and work. So for me, I couldn't make that sacrifice, even if there was some sort of clinical data. It's just more important for me. Now that I'm older, I slough it off. I do exercise, but not like I used to. But yeah, when I see these young guys who are willing to sacrifice their health and they think that slight spike in testosterone when they're working out is going to do anything, those are the guys I say, listen, if you're really that concerned about it, you really just stick to a strict diet and you'll be able to control those levels and you can enjoy your workout. I don't know what Spex thinks. Spex is heavily into training now, so I don't know how he feels about it.
I pretty much agree. I don't think training really has any real kind of association with hair loss. I mean, look at some world-renowned bodybuilders. Look at Arnie back in the day. Look at the state he got himself in. He kept his hair pretty well, still has. I mean, it's a question around his hair now, but he clearly kept his hair. He didn't have any issues with him training. I mean, I'm into my training now, but yeah, it doesn't worry me. It doesn't really it's not something I'll really worry about. I think, unfortunately, hair loss sufferers are looking for any possible reason or any avenue to have any that could have any association with their hair loss. The fact of the matter is, it's like if you're genetically coded to lose your hair, you're going to lose your hair.
Well, and that's the thing. I do think the guys that are genetically predisposed to losing their hair, they're obviously more hyper concerned because they're concerned that the slight rise in testosterone and free flowing testosterone will convert into DHT and exacerbate their hair loss. Guys like Arnold, who weren't really genetically predisposed to hair loss, these are guys that were on, allegedly on, all types of performance enhancing drugs. And they had no issues. He had no issues with that either. So, I mean, he just had a really strong hair gene.
Yeah.
But, I got to tell you.
Indeed. I think, like you say, I mean, people that are, kind of have the disposition on are going to lose their hair via male pattern baldness anyway, then the spike in testosterone, if that's going to kind of, boost it along, then, I wish there was some evidence out there to kind of back that up. But as far as I'm concerned, personally, I can't say I see a lot. I've met a lot of guys that have been into bodybuilding and not into bodybuilding, and I think generally speaking, the question always comes up. But I don't think there's any real strong evidence to back it up either way. Like you say, Spence, it's like look at all the guys that are having sexual relations, and it's like look at that for a good, I mean, even if you can go for longer than 10 or 15 minutes, it's a boost of testosterone to the system. I mean, I can't remember going that long. I think I did when I was about 21. now it doesn't last that long, but yeah, it's an interesting topic, Chris. It really is, and I wish there was some solid data to back it up. Maybe there will be at some point, but I think
sorry,
I can't help you further.
I think that guys really just you just have to understand that hair loss is what it is. We do what we can to try to prevent further hair loss if we can, but you can't put life on hold and doing important things like having sex, in my view, and or whether with somebody or without somebody. There's guys out there that these young guys, I mean, they're doing it to themselves 5 times a day, and they think that that's what's causing their hair loss. And there's a whole school of thought out there where guys are just abstaining not only from sex with women, but I mean, even the guys that don't have girlfriends or whatever, the guys that are just doing what comes natural, they're trying to refrain from that. And it's like they're writing down these. They're writing it down on charts and pie graphs, and I mean, the stuff that you see online is fucking insane. Now, I'm not saying that, I guess there could potentially be some sort of, I don't know, anecdotal evidence that, complete abstinence could, keep your testosterone in check, and maybe there could be some sort of a benefit. But I think it's going to be so negligible, guys, that you're wasting your life. God gave us sex. It's one of the few things that he gave us that's really, just for us. It's a wonderful thing. To abstain from that is, for your hair, to me, is absolutely insane. And that's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, and that's what I got to say about that. Fair play. Yeah, all good. Right, well done, Chris. All good, yeah. What else? You wanted to ask me a question, you said. Was that one directed at Spencer, or?
Yeah, that was more towards Spencer because he had a chapter in his book from what I remember. And, yeah, there was another question which was more directed towards you that I had. But Spencer will have a good idea anyway, just from his lifelong experience in the industry. But I was thinking about this recently the other day, but I remember very well that when I had my last surgery, and the 6 months following after it, from when I had it in, I think it was October 2011, it was like a real emotional roller coaster, and something in retrospect now I think about it, I don't really think when I was looking into hair transplant surgery, this sort of, not final time, because I've no doubt I'll probably need surgery when I get older, but I don't think I was really mentally prepared for it. I remember from the early stages, I remember when I got back from New York, and it was about day 3 and I started washing, but I was a bit obsessive with it and the aftercare and trying to be vigilant and make sure I didn't dislodge the grafts. And I I remember reading different clinics' opinions on the anchorage of when and grass to Sakura. I think Fella said it was 3 days, and Bernstein said 9 and 10 from the test they'd done. I think Hassan and Wan said 6 and 7. So, that was a bit annoying. But I didn't really prepare either for all the eventualities there were, i.e. shock loss, and the whole process really tested my emotions because at 3 months, I remember mailing Spex, I remember mailing his pictures. I actually said to him, I said, I hope I'm not one of those guys, where they just have like the X Factor, I think it is, where they just don't grow. And I remember looking in the mirror at 3 months, and a lot of guys will probably laugh when they hear this, but I actually looked in the mirror and I cried at that point because it really was a low point in the whole journey. Fortunately for me, and remarkably, the dramatic improvement I had from 3 to 6 months is quite known on the forums. We've got like a picture on my 12 months or whatever, which shows a comparison for 3 to 7 months. But I don't feel a lot of guys are really informed about the actual journey and the potential toll it can take on you, because it's not like having your teeth done where you go in, you have veneers or you have them whitened and you come out. This is like a real intense 6 to 12, even up to 18 months. I just wondered what Spex thought was the best way to deal with this, but also Spencer as well, equally.
Yeah, I'll go first if that's cool with you, Spence. I think, mate, you've been through the process. I've been through the process. I've had 10 hair transplants, so I know it only too well. This is why it's so vital that guys research and do their due diligence prior to having surgery. And this is one of the reasons I hung around on the various internet forums and, the Bald Truth Talk, and paid forward my personal experience and kind of condensed certain really important topics like downtime, patience, growth times, the whole emotional roller coaster that is hair restoration, and tried, we've all tried our best, veterans that have had surgeries and documented and done their blogs online to empower other hair loss sufferers and try our best to make people aware of the journey that is ahead of them, the decision-making process, the huge leap of faith that it is that in order to make that decision to have surgery. And then that is ironically the easy part. Then the whole process after is overwhelming. And it's like if anybody never had a child, it's impossible to try and relate to a new parent prior to them having a child how difficult it's going to be until you actually have the child. And then it's just, your whole life changes. It's similar to a hair transplant. No, you can go through it. People can read about the process. People can see the thousands of guys before them that have at, 2 months, at 3 months, at 4 months, how desperate they feel and how down they feel. And, I can relate to that. And I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, reassuring people, so many so that, I wrote a book and I made a project and videos to try and, connect with people and reassure them that that is part of the process. And the process then at the point of having the hair transplant is just the beginning of the emotional roller coaster, believe it or not. And you start on the back foot because you're exhausted, you're emotionally drained, you've physically been through the process, and then you really have to mentally be prepared to go into this journey ahead of you for a minimum of 6 to 8 to 12 months. And regardless of how many times an individual prior to surgery will read that, will actually physically read it and feel that they've understood it, it all goes out the window once you are that individual in those shoes and you are going through the process, and the fact that you need that reassurance. And that's why I do what I do. I repeated myself thousands of times. However, it's still so important to relay and reassure information to new hair loss sufferers, new hair transplant patients that are into the process, and just comfort them and make sure that they are aware. And that's why we do pre-op pictures, 3-month pictures, 6-month pictures, 8-month pictures, 12-month pictures, like you did, Chris, ironically, and your journey clearly highlights the time scale that the development occurs, and it's really reassuring. And people like you, it's great. The more people that we can get like you documenting online, a picture paints 1,000 words, and that's the best way that we can try and relate to them. But it's a really important point that you've made there, that patients going into this process can never be too informed, can never be too empowered, because it is such an emotional struggle. And unfortunately, once you've had surgery, it's kind of like your senses are heightened. You can become quite obsessive about it. You can scrutinize it a little bit too much. And as a process of that, you can get a little bit introverted and a little bit down with it all. Have I made the right decision? Buyer's remorse. You've just got to be confident in your choice of surgeon and understand that this is a journey, a real long, slow, arduous journey. And I mean, I've made an infamous topic online called patience, which people can refer to, and it will really help them and reassure them if there's anybody right now listening that is at that stage where they're thinking, God, what have I done here? This is not what I expected, and reassure them of the timeline involved. I hope that makes sense. I went off on one there.
Well, I can tell you this, that obviously all I know about surgical hair restoration is from what I've gleaned over the years from the thousands of people who have contacted me for advice and for information about the procedure and about the industry itself. I have done my due diligence over the years and have done my research and have chosen not to have surgery based on my obviously my hair loss characteristics, the fact that I believe, at least for me, that if I did have surgery, I don't know if I would be equipped to deal with the potential of shock loss when I have been able to save enough hair to make myself feel pretty comfortable in my own skin. So, I don't ever, and I talk about hair greed a lot. I'm in a position in my world where I can have anyone perform my hair transplant. If I wanted to have 2 or 3 of the best doctors in the world, who people consider the best doctors in the world, come together under one roof and do a live surgery on Spencer Kobren, I could have that done. And while I am absolutely confident in the members of the IHRS and the guys that I've worked with for many years, for me it's just not something that I think I need done to improve my life. So I choose not to have it done. But I always tell guys that, and you made a good point, this isn't like any other cosmetic surgery. This is something, you get your nose done. Yeah, it could take, a year before the swelling goes down completely. But for the most part, within a couple of months, you know what you're going to look like. That change is made. Good, bad, or indifferent, you see the result. Like you said, if you have your teeth done, that takes a couple of days unless you decide to have, correction through braces or Invisalign or whatever it is. But for the most part, any procedure you have performed, you're going to see results relatively quickly. You don't have the same waiting game. Hair transplantation, you have to wait a year to see the final result. And then you still may not be happy because it may not be to the point where it's, the density that you want, or, and you kind of know that going into it. At least most guys know that usually it takes more than one procedure. So it is a process that can be painstaking. And, you go through so many, this emotional roller coaster during this process. And part of that is, the first thing is, buyer's remorse. What the fuck did I do? You're sitting there, whether you had strip or FUE, your scalp is, scabbed. It seems exciting because, the outline of the hairline is there that you didn't have before. But as that starts to disappear and as you start, those grafts start to fall out, and some guys are worse off or look worse than they did before the surgery for a short period of time, they start to freak out. Those are the phone calls and the emails that I get. And those, it goes well beyond the forum. It's about, at least in my world, guys contacting us through the American Hair Loss Association and the IHRS and the Bald Truth. Obviously, through the back end of the Bald Truth Talk. Guys are in a panic, absolute panic. And most of these guys will come out the other end, just like you did. Both of you guys did, better off than when they started. There are a handful of guys, unfortunately, that don't, and that's what cosmetic surgery is. It's a risk. So yeah, man, that whole waiting phase, that's a rough thing, and that is one issue that I don't think is really put out there like it should be, at least to the mainstream media, about this form of cosmetic surgery, that it is a waiting game. That's when I see like some of these doctors on Extreme Makeover over the years, some doctors that we all know, and you see they perform the surgery, and at the end of the reveal, these people are wearing wigs. It's not even their hair transplant because the hair hasn't grown out yet. I kind of felt that was a ridiculous segment to include in these extreme makeovers. And the fact, I understand why the doctors want to do it because it's good press, but it's, in my view, completely misleading and could really, mislead a lot of patients into believing that they're going to go in, under the knife, have a hair transplant, and they're going to come out with this full head of hair in a couple of months when we all know that was a hairpiece. So,
I agree completely. And another really important topic that you touched on there is hair greed. It's a real reality, hair greed, based on the fact that it's really important that patients have their expectations in check, because basically it doesn't matter how much hair you've got, you're always going to want more. So you've just got to be aware, and as I've tried to educate people and have posted online, you've got to understand that you're going to potentially have this hair transplant, then the goalpost, it's going to come through, it's going to take time, but over that duration of the process of having the hair transplant, your goalposts are going to move, and you're always going to want more hair as well. So just be really well informed that, very few people just get one hair transplant.
Right.
Not necessarily because they need to have another one, but they want to have another one, because then the first time they go through the process is the hardest time. But the second time round, they realize, well, actually, in retrospect, it wasn't that tough. I can go back in. I'm going to do, tweak here, tweak there, add a little bit further back, because they're more familiar with the process and they're more familiar with the time scales involved. But hair greed is a fact, Well,
it's also it could be extremely dangerous. That's the point that I'm trying to make, is that some guys, sometimes you just have to leave well enough alone in life, especially with something like this. I have known guys who have gone for that last procedure, and one guy in particular that comes to mind, he had 4 procedures, lucked out through all 4, great scar, looked fantastic. And it just wasn't good enough for him. He went for that final procedure. He had a really bad stretch scar for the last procedure. And then so he had this whole new problem that affected his life to the point that he became very depressed. And he ended up having to waste donor hair to fill in that scar via FUE. And that is, it's more typical than you think, especially when guys start to go down this route. I had a woman ask me the other day, we were out at a social engagement, and we were talking about my hair, and she was talking about her husband's hair, and the first thing I tell people is, don't touch it. I got paint in the back, and then they're all inquisitive. They don't understand what that means. I have to explain the whole makeup thing. And she actually asked me, well, you talk about hair transplants. Why don't you get a hair transplant? So I had to talk about, give my story to her. And people kind of look at you like, well, if you can do it, why don't you do it? It's it seems like it's an easy fix. Why don't you do it? And I kind of get tired of explaining myself and, all the possible, the entire scope and possible pitfalls of going down that route. And that in my world, it's fine that I have to put a little paint on the back of my head. I don't want to be greedy, because when you're greedy in anything in life, and I've learned this, through, luckily not my own experience, but seeing people who have been greedy, whether it's been in business or whatever, they always end up falling on their ass. So I think it's important to just kind of realize, if you look good now, you can wait. That surgery is going to be there. You don't need to keep getting more surgery. So
that's a really good point, Spence. Surgery can wait. Surgery can wait. And it's really important that prior to surgery that you have a really good look at, appropriate treatments that are out there, whether it's the natural route, which we kind of, the experienced veterans will say, well, you're going to be wasting your time, but the more proven methods of finasteride, minoxidil, because I've met with so many guys that are potentially kind of, ready to pull the trigger on surgery, yet actually haven't haven't had a treatment course of DHT prevention medication, which then they actually say, well, okay, yeah, I'll give that a go. It makes sense. They then try that. They get on finasteride for 12 months, and lo and behold, it enables them to avoid having surgery because they've regrown hair or stabilized their hair. That 12-month period has allowed them to reassess the situation, reevaluate the situation, and also research further into surgery and in order to make sure whether or not it's for them or not. So it's really vital that, a real key word with regards to hair loss, hair restoration is patience. You just have to not rush in, take your time, really research, use the forums, use Bold Truth Talk, and speak with people privately, get them to email you, try and meet with them, and really just get a really good overview of what people have experienced, what they've tried, what's worked for them, what hasn't. And prior to surgery categorically is a last resort. I've actually had 10 hair transplants, okay, believe it or not.
That's great.
But the thing is, the secret to my success is finasteride, because it's prevented further loss in the mid to the crown. Now, would I have actually still wanted to have a hair transplant despite the success I've had with finasteride? Possibly. But I jumped into surgery. I didn't have a choice to reevaluate and take my time. I possibly would have still had surgery, but I would have taken my time and chosen a different surgeon without a shadow of a doubt, and known had the confidence that finasteride was working for me. I went into finasteride not really knowing what it was going to do I jumped in hook, line and sinker, classic, your classic kind of young, dumb and full of cum, just fucking ran at it, and I was very, very, very fortunate and have lived to tell the tale. And that's why I felt it so important to empower other hair loss sufferers so they weren't abused like I was, and make sure that they make the right decision for them in their own timeline, and make sure that they approach it patiently. And Chris is another classic patient who rushed into it young and who's fortunately come good. He had got on finasteride and then got repaired really well, and also had minimal loss to enable him to get the result that he's got. So just be really cautious and make sure you do your due diligence, and make sure that you protect yourself in terms of getting on a good regime to stabilize your hair loss. It is vital. I use the analogy, if a builder is going to build a strong wall to stand the test of time, he puts it on a foundation. And the foundation essentially is proven hair loss treatments, and make sure that you do stabilize the situation prior to building the wall on top of it, if that makes sense.
Hey, Chris, man, we are going to let you go and take another caller. So, again, man, I always appreciate you calling in. You always have some great questions and great commentary. And enjoy your Easter, man.
Yeah, thank you. And you too, Spencer.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks again for calling.
No problem.
All right, take it easy.
See you, buddy. See you, Chris.
Phone number is 0203-3724-683. That's 0203-3724-683. Give us a call here at the Bald Truth UK. If you have any questions, concerns about your hair loss, if you just need to vent, this is your safe place. Before we take a break, I'm going to take another phone call. Again, phone number 0203-3724-683. I have to get used to giving out that number because the whole thing is really odd to me, these UK numbers. But I'm going to get it. Let's see who this is. Hey, you're on the air. Who's this?
Hey, how are you?
Who's this, Harari?
Yeah, it's me.
What's happening, man? How are you?
Yeah, glad to hear you after a long time.
I'm glad to hear your voice too, man. What's going on? I just checked my radio Skype, and I saw that you Skyped me the other day. So I don't know if you have any questions you want to ask me directly on the show. I'd be more than happy to help.
Okay, well, I got two issues to talk about. The personal issue, I'll just leave it later, but there are two things I hope that you were talking about it, because it's a breakthrough, I think so, in my opinion. We all heard about the PGD2 blocker.
Right.
So right now, I found that solution. It's available on the mpbtreatments.com, and they're having it in 3 different concentrations. One is 0.1%, 0.2%, 1%, and they're using something called CRTH2 antagonist. However, it's very expensive. It's $122 to $155 respectively. So they say that it's the only current topical option that disrupts the binding of prostaglandin, I think so, D2 to the BGD2 receptor of G protein. So I just wanted to bring this into your attention. And also the second thing that really makes me excited, I heard about Dr. Wesley.
Right, Dr. Wesley.
He had something to do about scarlet surgery.
Yes.
And I really don't understand that, because you taught us, Spencer, before that once you're cut, you're cut.
That's true.
So how would he be able to give us a scarlet FUE? That I really need to understand, since you have a good connection or good friendship with the doctor.
Well, I'll tell you. We'll talk about Dr. Wesley first. I'm actually going to be doing I'm having a Skype conversation with him, perhaps tomorrow. Actually, we have to arrange it, but we've been in contact a lot recently. He hasn't given me all the details, but from what I gather so far, the technique is actually it's pretty what's the word? It's pretty simple. That it's actually kind of amazing that nobody else actually kind of figured this out. Sometimes the best ideas in any industry or in science or whatever are the simplest of ideas. Just from the basic information that he provided me with, it's a pretty simple concept that seems to, and if it works as he claims it works, will leave basically visibly, no visible scars. Now I don't know what's going to happen as far as microscopic fibrotic tissue, which, if you're utilizing a lot of grafts, it's possible you can have this, hardening, this fibrotic tissue across the back of your scalp, which may make it more difficult in the future to get more FUE grafts out. We just don't know. And that's basically just what I'm thinking. I don't know if that's the case. And again, I'm not a doctor or a scientist. But I will tell you this. Dr. Wesley is a real doctor. He's a scientist as far as I'm concerned, because he's really conducting his trials, his clinical trials, the way they're supposed to be conducted. And he's going to be sharing this information with the medical community, with the society, with the hair transplant industry at large. So it's not something that he's going to be holding close to his vest. So we're going to find out very quickly if this technique is going to be viable, and if it's going to be something that's reproducible by other doctors. And according to Dr. Wesley, it is. So you make a good point. I don't understand how anything could be scarless either if they're removing tissue from the back of your scalp. One theory is, and we were thinking about this, with Dr. Cooley's experiments and some other guys, that maybe using these, matrices like A-cell could actually prevent the tissue from forming into fibrotic tissue, essentially leaving those scars, even though, the first iteration seemed to leave, some soft tissue, but, hairless areas. So maybe, in the future, a combination of what Dr. Wesley is doing or, claiming to do, and using something like A-cell could leave something that's completely scarless. But you make a great point.
Yes, Spencer, because other members, they were saying that Dr. Go is already doing that. It's not a breakthrough. However, I asked Dr. Wesley something about it. I just told him that you mentioned that you are on target for a follow-up clinical trial using the completed instrument by February of 2013. He replied me in another forum, that this thing has been delayed a little bit, and that he's looking forward to perform another study by mid of March to ensure the consistent creation of the same type of graft. So this is exactly what I heard from him.
Right.
But I don't know. Probably you have more information.
Well, I can tell you this, that, there are guys who are out there who I think what Dr. Go is doing is very intriguing. It's very interesting. That's why we have a section in the cutting edge area of our forum about Dr. Go, so that conversation can grow, because I think it's compelling stuff. However, there is only so much clinical data that has been made available to us. And, and I say this all the time, and I get shit for it, but, anybody in media, in medicine or in academia can write a paper. And in most cases, if it's something that's unique and interesting, whether it's something that is really a viable option or not, it can be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Guys don't understand that. They just don't get that. That there has been some real crap published in clinical journals, and there's been, breakthroughs published in clinical journals. And I'm not saying that whatever Dr. Go is doing is either one, but I will say that it's intriguing. And I do think it's unfortunate that the information really isn't being shared the way that I think it should be shared. And
what do you think about the PG2 blocker, Spencer?
Well, I think that there's a lot of potential as far as the science is concerned. My concern is when you're buying stuff kind of on the gray market, and you don't know exactly what you're getting, and especially when you in order to sell these type of medications or these type of products, they really can't be sold in a complete form because that would be illegal. So they leave it up to you guys to mix the concoction together, and who knows what the fuck you guys are going to get.
Yeah. Spencer, I really don't want this to take a little bit longer time because I am sure that there are many callers. However, this is the most important thing that I'm looking for right now is about the scar revision. I almost get confused by the scar revision correct technique. Which technique would I really follow? Which technique should I really ask for? Everybody is using different technique. Probably,
it depends.
I think
it depends.
Yeah, for example,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Dr. Lindsay, for example, he said that he would close my scar, and after 7 days, he will remove the sutures or the staples. He will remove them within 7 days, so there will be no mark on my scar. So this is the first thing that's coming from Dr. Lindsay. And Dr. Feriduni said to me that he's going to use the staples because the sutures, they leave like train marks, and I should leave my staples for 14 days in order to guarantee the closure, because the scar revision needs the sutures or the staples to stay longer time. Okay. And the other hand, for example, Dr. Wahal said that staples aren't good for scar revision. Sutures should be used, and you should have double sutures. So I'm really confused. Some say staples are better, like Hassan and Wong and Feriduni and filler, for example. Some say sutures are better, like Wahal. I have really completely no idea because this is something not really popular. It's not a popular topic, the scar revision. Not everybody talks about it. I would really like your experience, guys, because some say we will remove it in 14 days. Some say we will remove it in only 7 days. And some say you can even leave it up to 25 days.
I'm going to give you my opinion, and then I'll hand it over to Spex. My opinion is this.
Yeah.
When it comes to surgery, different doctors are going to get different results based on their level of skill and their experience with a specific technique. You can have two doctors who are really equally skilled, but in their hands, for whatever reason, just the methods that they use, they have found that using sutures for scar revision and removing those sutures early for scar revision seem to work better in their practice. It's more consistent for them. And it could be luck. It could be the physiological aspects of the specific patients that they worked on. So they see that in their hands that these are the best results, that they're getting the best results using this method. So it's very difficult to say which method is better for each patient specifically. That's a tough call, and it's a call that I can never make. Dr. Rahal is obviously confident with what he's saying. Dr. Lindsay is obviously confident in what he's saying, and Dr. Hassan Wong are confident in what they're saying. My thing is this: I think that scar revision is a really, really tricky thing, and from the probably well over 1,000 guys that have contacted me in the last 15 years who have had this procedure, there is a larger percentage of guys who have stretch back than I would like to see. And that's, the guys that are getting the scar surgically removed and then sutured together. So, there's always that chance. Now, I would say it's probably upwards of about 55%. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but it's a little more than half of the guys that were unhappy in the end, who ended up having to get either FUE into the scar or just kind of left it alone and said, they didn't want to go down this road again. So I do think that, yes, doing underlying suturing and again, I'm not a doctor, guys, and then, suturing on top, they're really trying to hold that tissue together with as little tension as possible is probably the way to go. But we don't know what your specific physiology is. So I think it's very difficult to give anybody a one-size-fits-all, answer to something like that. If it were me personally, depending on how big my scar was, if I had enough hair to utilize and put into the scar tissue, I might try to utilize FUE into the scar tissue just to see how much I could break that scar up and to see if that would give me a cosmetically appreciable result without cutting that tissue out again. If you want to cut that tissue out and if you're planning on getting another strip, I guess that's a different situation. But, I think that's all things you have to put into consideration. What do you think, Spex?
I think, unfortunately, you see, hair restoration, and certainly scar revision, it's not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination. Now, it all very much depends what is right or what would be necessarily the best protocol for any individual is very much down to what that individual brings to the table. Now, all these different doctors, definitely, they do have different protocols. It can be very confusing, but one thing for sure, given the names that you've just reeled off there, they certainly will all have the patient's best interests at heart, and they're all very competent surgeons. So they are going to do what they feel works best or what they feel has worked better for them based on their experience. Now, there are different methods. There are different forms of closure. There's 3-layer closure, trico closure. There's even the whole gold, staple closure that Dr. Wolf used to use. There's various different methods, but what's really, really important is that the patient has very realistic expectations of what it is any of those doctors are going to be able to achieve for them in light of where they are at and what scar they are bringing to the table. Because an individual like you, Harari, has had multiple surgeries. So I'm sure any of the particular surgeons that have offered you advice, they've certainly not given you any guarantees, I wouldn't have thought. Because it's...
No, they did not give me any guarantees, yes. But most of them, let's say majority of them, the only person who say that if you eat my scar will be the only solution is Dr. Bisanga. The rest, all of them, they advise me to do a scar revision first. And then I would do FUE into scar because they said that we won't guarantee the growth of the hair into your oldest scar because we don't know how deep is the tissue. That's what they told me.
Yeah, completely. Well, I mean, it all basically boils down to the laxicity of the scalp and the experience of the surgeon and how they feel that they can potentially benefit you given the physical variables that you're bringing to the table. You are Harari with your previous 2 strip scars, your previous the previous laxicity that's been removed, your physiology. Some patients have a tendency to stretch over others, and it really is a leap of faith, categorically. And I'm glad to hear that no doctors are giving you any guarantees. I presume the doctors that have recommended strip surgery, revision via strip surgery, would be wanting to, in your best interest, revise and minimize the existing scarring as well as they can, to then enable you to use fewer FUEs into that strip scar because hopefully they feel that they would be able to make a smaller surface area. But I can pretty much guarantee you one thing. You're not going to be left with a pencil line thin strip scar because of the previous kind of surgeries that you've had and how your physiology has already been altered. Now, it is a leap of faith for you. None of us have got a crystal ball. However, what is really important, I feel, before you personally do anything, is have a physical examination with these doctors rather than kind of pictures and just a conversation, because there's no substitute for having an in-person physical examination with the particular surgeon of your choice for him, because a couple of their opinions may actually change if they were to assess you in person. Now, just remind me, have you actually seen any of the physicians in person?
No. The only thing is Dr. Freiduni asked me to video myself doing the scalp exercise, and he found that my laxity is fine. I even did the same video for Joe Tronic, and he assumed that my laxity is okay. So I'm taking a word of mouth. But to be honest with you,
I agree. Word of mouth
I did not travel all the way for this, so I did not meet anyone in person. That's true. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion in terms of how traumatic hair restoration has been for you, in terms of the journey that you have been on and the process of now the repair journey that you're on and the tedious kind of labor-intensive journey potentially ahead of you, that it might be worth you investing a couple of $1,000s, a few extra man hours, and actually traveling and seeing a few, surgeons in person prior to making a decision on what you feel is the best for you, rather than just taking this leap of faith, flying across the world in the hope that based on a video or a Skype video, that the doctor's going to be able to, kind of follow through with what he said. Because this for you is for anybody, is a monumental decision that in retrospect, it might well be worth having an examination prior, investing that little bit more money, investing that little bit more time, so that you can then take that information away with you and make a much more informed decision based on what is the right decision for you. Personally, for you, this is it. People unfortunately feel it's not a one size fits all, and unfortunately, people possibly, you're asking Spencer's opinion, you're asking my opinion, what would be the best form of closure for you, and who would it be best with? It is impossible for us to give you an accurate answer. All we could advise is that you seek out the names that you've spoken about are all surgeons I would trust my head with. Okay. Now, when it comes to scar revision of a particular scar such as yours, and you've had multiple strip surgeries, and you've only got one crack at the whip with this, that it might well be worth just investing that little bit more time and energy and seeing several doctors in person. And although that's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, maybe, I can't do that, I can't afford that, I need this fixing, I need it sorting out as quick as possible. You may wish that you'd done that in retrospect. For
this is my strategy.
Hindsight. Does that make sense?
My strategy was the reason why I chose Dr. Freiduni. I chose him because for a reason that I have two scenarios. He's a good FUE surgeon and he's a good strip surgeon. So I had a deal with him. If I would go for a scar revision. If the scar revision was not possible on me, under further investigation or inspection, then definitely I would go for FUE into scar. So it's like 2 in 1. So I'm not losing anything. However, the main purpose of going to Dr. Freiduni is that I needed to get rid of the hairs that I have under my new hairline created by Dr. Rahal. I saw a lot of examples for Dr. Ferler of how he extracted these FUE without leaving marks, and I was encouraged to leave them because, as you can see, I'm in a big dilemma over here. I can't comb my hair backwards because these hair are growing and they look so ugly. I mean, I don't have punch. They're all single hairs. That's why, I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm going to Dr. Faridouni anyway, because this is part of my regime, is to remove these grafts under my hairline. So this is one of the reasons also for why I'm going to Dr. Faridouni.
Well, that's
so
a fair enough point,
lose,
mate. It's a fair enough point, and I think Dr. Faridouni obviously is a good surgeon, and he's got multiple skills, and he'll be able to possibly give you options if he feels under a personal examination that one option is better than another. So I do appreciate where you're coming from. I was just trying to give you a perspective on maybe just getting a few different opinions in person. That was all, mate.
I definitely agree with what Spex just said. I mean, and like I said before, I mean, Guy, I know what you're going through. Obviously, I haven't gone through what you're going through. Luckily, I kind of was able to step back, and I just kind of made the decision not to go through surgery early on. However, you got to see people in person if you can. If you can, see people in person, and just don't jump into it, man, because you've already been through so much. But listen, Herrera, we actually have to take a break. I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
I'm so glad that you called. Go ahead.
Before I go, Spencer, I would like to thank you for the show again. And just wanted to hear your opinion next time about Dr. Negam, because this guy is doing a lot of work, and he's trying to upgrade his photography and his technique, and he's answering every single question. So
I'll tell you what. I'll do in brief. I'll tell you how I feel. I think, or what I think. I'm glad that he's out there trying to do what he's doing. I'm still, I have no idea, to tell you the truth, if this guy is legitimate or not. But I like the fact that the discussion is happening, and also the fact that he's out there. In a sense, I don't like to see doctors pandering to the message forums. But then, on the other side, it's like, well, you know what? Maybe he really believes in what he's doing, and he just hasn't been able to present it well until this point, and he's trying to get to that point. So we'll see. I'm sitting here with an open mind, and at some point, if I believe that he is truly onto something and is not just some guy who's trying to draw potential patients in through the message forums, perhaps I will have an interview with him to try to get to the bottom of what he's doing.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. God bless you all, and I wish you have a good Easter holiday.
You got it. Hey, you too. Happy Easter. Listen, guys, we're going to take a break.
And you, Harry.
We're going to take a break. Phone number is 0203-372-4683. I'm going to say it the way you guys in the UK like to hear it. It's 0203-372-4683. I'm Spencer Kobren here with Spencer Spex Stevenson. You are listening to and watching The Bald Truth UK. We'll be right back. After this, stay with us.
The man who's helping to make hair loss history.
They wish to cure us, but I say we are the cure.
It's Spencer David Kobren.
Hey guys, welcome back. Phone number 0203-372-4683. I'm Spencer Kobren, and you're listening to and watching The Bald Truth UK. Great show tonight. Going to wrap things up and talk about a couple of things with Spex before we close up shop. I know there was some interesting press this week about Prince Harry and his hair loss in the Huffington Post. Spex, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I saw it quite recently. I think it's been in a few different papers, actually.
I'm sure. I catch it on Huffington Post. The Huffington Post, I can't speak tonight. It's kind of like a news aggregator in a sense. So, and that's where I catch a lot of stuff from across the world.
Yeah. It'll always end up in there.
Yeah.
I think it started out in the Daily Express, a well-known newspaper out here initially, and then it feeds down into other streams. But
Sure.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's not come as a surprise to me. Obviously, given his gene pool, I mean, there's questions over poor bloody Prince Harry and who his bloody father is. But I think
isn't
the
that
fact
horrible?
of the matter is,
I gotta tell you, you guys, the UK press, the UK tabloids,
it's wrong.
I gotta tell you,
So
I don't
wrong.
know. I mean, I'm not going to say it's worse than some of the tabloids here in the United States, but I got to tell you, man, they definitely give the U.S. tabloids a run for their money because I mean these are the most read papers in the UK. Or the tabloids.
Sells newspapers.
Yeah.
Let's make some shit up.
But who? I mean, the thing is, I feel so bad for these guys. These guys, especially what happened with Prince William, and it was just so cruel to see how the press talked about his hair loss, and now it's happening to Harry.
I agree, and I think unfortunately, I don't know if you saw some of the pictures. There's one picture in particular which is pretty clear that poor Harry is certainly losing his crown.
Oh yeah.
And I think the fact of the matter is, given the fact that poor William went under such brutal exposure, a relentless exposure, and still is, the poor guy, given his profile, and it all came around based on, I think, poor guy, about several months before his wedding, on the lead up to his wedding, which, as we all know, was just a global sensation, and billions of people tuned in and watched it. On the lead up to that, I think the poor guy had a spike in his hair loss, probably through stress, maybe, I don't know, but it became a focus point over the wedding, and on the lead up to it, it was all about his hair.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me. It's just kind of like, aren't these people human beings? Don't they see that this is something that these poor guys really have no control over unless they decide to treat it? And in some cases, even if you treat it, nothing could be done. I mean, imagine if, who's like a well-known female celebrity that gets a lot of shit in the tabloids over there? Is there anybody that you can think of?
Oh gosh! It used to be Amy. It used to be Amy Winehouse, didn't it? Poor girl.
Yeah.
But,
oh my God. Yeah, that's terrible too. That's terrible too. But but there's certain things that you just can't touch with women, and a lot of that has their weight, cellulite, stuff like that. Things that people would just be shocked if you were to talk. I mean, they do in the tabloids, obviously, but they don't. They just don't seem to be as brutal about anything as they are about hair loss.
No, I know, because I don't think they understand how brutal it is. I think that's the kind of the irony of it. That unfortunately, hair loss, unless you're a hair loss sufferer, is just absolutely until you're a hair loss sufferer, you don't realize how brutal it is, rather. And the one thing is, it's like anything. It's human nature, isn't it? The tabloids are going to pick up on any area of weakness possible on poor Prince Harry and Prince William. And my God, have they not had it hard enough with the media over the death of their mother?
Oh my God.
And their poor lives have just been, just interrogated since they were born. And now it's like the poor guy must still be, like we do, as a hair loss sufferer, just emotionally traumatized by his hair. A good-looking young guy, they both were good-looking guys, still are, but their hair loss is going to play a detrimental effect on their confidence. And they're just in such a, people see it as a privileged position. They're in a kind of unfortunate position that, they've got to have every single thing they do or feel or wear or touch or every area that they go to exposed in the press. But it doesn't matter where the poor guy is. And now the point I'm going to make, Harry is now going to come under the same wrath that poor William did with regards to, doesn't matter
it may
what
be even
this
worse
guy
now,
is doing.
because he's kind of developed this reputation for being a player, for being a playboy, for being this sexy young like this guy that just goes out and enjoys his life kind of in a unique way as opposed to the rest of the monarchy. A guy that's just kind of loose and and now this is something that's kind of like a chink in his armor, and they're going to.
Well, they'll punish him.
They're going to punish him
for it.
It's horrible. I was just interviewed for, I'm not going to name the paper until it comes out, but for a very big paper in the UK. And we were talking about this, and I was not about Harry, but just about, the fact that you brought up before, that unless you're a hair loss sufferer, you have no effing clue what it's like. And the person who was interviewing me she was a woman, and she was just like, she was floored. She had no idea how this affects men. No idea. And I guess I was really able to paint a picture to the point where she fully understood, and she kind of related it to the way women feel about their weight, or about other issues, about feeling, the sense of needing to be perfect in this, world of, the way the media is, and just it's a much more difficult place just to try to be a normal person. And I'm telling you, people are shocked when they find this program and they hear callers like, Chris and Harari and other guys who call in who are just devastated. I actually had a kind of consulted with a young guy, an Indian kid, who was basically suicidal. He Skyped me from India today, suicidal about his hair loss. He ended up having surgical hair restoration, and it took him 2 procedures to finally get it to the point where he's happy. First procedure didn't go well. But, you think that when you're living in a place where, what's the percentage of poverty in India? Guys, just working beyond, below the poverty level. And just life is just it's more difficult in certain parts of the world. This guy was so devastated about his hair loss that he was actually considering suicide, and he was taking antidepressants. So it's compelling, man. It's compelling stuff.
I can believe that, man. I've dealt with many a guy on Suicide Watch, with
It's
regards
amazing.
to just how, I was never suicidal, but God. Hair loss, I can always relate to those guys that are in the hurt locker.
I had some dark times, man.
Yeah, I was in a very, very dark place as a young guy, so I can always relate to guys like that. But I think, yeah, you're right. These journalists that write these articles in the press have no understanding, no empathy with regards to how hair loss affects that poor individual. Somebody like Harry and William, it just has hit them so hard when everybody's reading about their Achilles heel, which it will be. It will be their Achilles heel,
right.
And how it affects them. And it's like when we did recently the BBC Radio 4 interview with the gentleman that was investigating hair loss and how it affected people. And he was a hair loss sufferer, and how he tried to although he'd kind of parked the process of hair loss, but he could really, I remember when I was interviewing with him, and he kind of remembers how it was quite a traumatic time at the time that he was losing his hair. But back then he didn't realize there were options available to him, and he just chalked it up, as many people do. The difference now is in the age that we're living is now there are options, and it'd be interesting to know with regards to Harry and William. Gosh, they're intelligent young guys themselves. It wouldn't take long to do a bit of internet research and see that Propecia or finasteride,
I find that interesting.
is available. Whether or not they can take it, I
wonder why. And it's interesting because I'm pretty sure Prince William decided not to do anything. It's possible he tried medication, didn't work for him, but just from the looks of the progression of his hair loss, he probably didn't do anything. Will Harry try to do something to keep his hair, or is he going to just see some typical trichologist that you guys have in the UK, and then end up with some sort of tincture? Yeah.
Can you imagine the bill that trichologist will charge? Bloody hell, they charge an arm and a leg anyway. They'll see Prince Harry walking in and go, okay, then we'll have a bit of that. Propecia, 400 quid a month.
That's right.
Here you go.
Well, what's funny about the trichologist is that, until finasteride came out, or minoxidil, they really had nothing to offer, in my view. And they've been in business for decades upon decades, with these, trichological organizations. And I would think to myself, I understood how these businesses got away with it, but they basically really presented themselves, in my view, as legitimate scientists. And, these guys would come out in white coats. And I'm not saying that, I'm sure there's some guys out there that are doing the right thing. But in general, in my view, the whole science, quote unquote, of trichology, and just the way that it's been marketed in the UK and, of course, here in the United States, I always found it to be suspect. And go ahead.
Preying on the vulnerabilities, isn't it? Obviously there was never any kind of proof in it. I think they're kind of dying a death now, those kind of places, because of the internet, and it's made people very aware of what actually, the few treatments that do work. But I'd be interested actually if Harry has got proactive, because he must have been watching William. They must have talked about it. They must have,
I'm
they're
sure.
Close. They're brothers.
And I can guarantee that, I can't guarantee, but I'm sure if he reads the papers, the tabloids, I'm sure that if he's interested in hair loss, he's read the Times article, which was kind of a spin-off of the BBC piece. And who knows? Wouldn't it be awesome if these guys would pick up the phone and call us?
Can you imagine if Harry Harry calls the show. That'd be brilliant. You'd be like, nah, bug off.
Yeah.
No, it's Harry. It's Harry here.
Well, I think unless he has there's some good Prince Harry impersonators. He has a pretty distinct voice, in my view, and I think that maybe we'd be able to recognize him.
Well, you never know. He may be informed. He may already watch the show. And like you say, there was recently you were mentioned in the Times newspaper, which I'm sure him or one of his relatives must read. They must have found. They'll potentially.
Well, I'm gonna have to check the logs to see if we got anything from Buckingham Palace.
Beckingham, but just Buckingham Palace, man.
Yeah, whatever.
You Americans really struggle with the pronunciation. It's like your zeros; you just can't say them.
I can't say them. All right, man. Listen, let's call it a night, man. I think we had a good show. I want to wish everybody a great Easter and happy Passover. And Spex, you doing anything in particular?
Yeah, fortunately, we're going away for a few days to a local, it's kind of called Center Parks. It's a place where basically kids just rip it up in a swimming pool. They just love it. So
that's cool.
We'll spend some quality time with the family and the kids and eat a lot of chocolate. Have a binge couple of days. Looking forward to it. And you got any plans? You got any plans to get away? Or?
I'm working, dude. I am working. That's all I do. But
I hope it all goes well, man.
Thanks.
I will touch base with you soon, I'm sure. And listen, happy Easter to everybody. And keep calling the show, guys. I've had a couple of emails of guys that haven't been able to get in. Do apologize. We'll try and keep the phone lines open and try and even guys, if you want to call, email myself, and we can try and get you in and get you a slot to call the show. I appreciate it's difficult, but have a good Easter, everybody, and take care, Spence, and have a good one.
All right, man. You too, guys. Let me give out the websites, thebaldtruth.com. If you want to interact with other hair loss sufferers, check out our message forum, which is baldtruthtalk.com. And if you want to get some basic information on hair loss and its treatment, you can go to the American Hair Loss Association website, which is americanhairloss.org. I can't speak tonight again. americanhairloss.org is the website. Until next time, be strong, God bless, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for any inconvenience you may have been put to prior to the program, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if you could now leave by the exits at the rear, that'd be splendid. Thank you. Good night.